So what if I told you there's a simple secret to master any skill, whether it's the piano or the drums or even communication and leadership? And it's not about talent or luck or having the best tools in gear. It's about something completely different. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it is and how to apply it to your musicianship and your life. So most people believe that mastery comes down to a couple of things: talent or putting in hard work. And while those both are really important, it's not the secret to mastering skills. You can see proof of this in child prodigies, like those kids who at 4, 5, or 6 years of age can play the piano at a master level like someone who's been playing 40, 50, or 60 years. And obviously at that age, they haven't even been alive long enough to put in hard work like we typically think about when we say hard work leads to mastery. And also there's this 10,000 hour myth that states that you have to put in about 10,000 hours of time to become a master at something. And this has some merit because time is a factor when we're talking about becoming a master at something. But the 10,000 hour thing is a bit dated and probably held more truth decades ago, because now we have better understanding in how to master things. The advent of AI itself has helped speed up mastery in a lot of areas. So what's the secret to mastery? Well, I'll tell you what it is, and I'll tell you exactly how to apply it. So the secret is really simple, and it's broken down into 2 parts. And I promise you, once you get it down, you will be able to master any skill at lightning speed. So the first part is a principle that originated in Japan called the Kaizen principle. And in America, we basically refer to it as the 1% rule. And it focuses on incremental changes over time. And it focuses on improving little by little, thus the 1%. And the second part is something called deliberate practice. And this is about putting a laser focus on a smaller task within the skill you're trying to learn and mastering that smaller task. In a larger context, it's about understanding that any skill can be broken down into smaller parts, and mastery of those smaller parts lead to mastery of the skill itself. So, for example, you want to learn and master the piano. Well, a smaller task within that skill could be something like learning and mastering putting your fingers on the piano correctly. That's a smaller task within the larger skill. But the real secret is knowing how to tie this Kaizen principle or the 1% rule together with deliberate practice and making them work together. So how do you apply this secret and learn to master any skill you want? Well, that's the good part, so stay with me. So if we take our example of learning to master the piano, the very first thing you want to do is ask the question of, what is the 1% of learning and mastering the piano that I can put a laser focus on today? And then what is the 1% that I can put laser focus on tomorrow, and on and on? And the good news is that it's really, really easy to answer this question, because it can literally be anything pertaining to the piano that's a small part of learning it. And this part is why most people fail at learning and mastering a skill like piano, because their minds tell them, oh, putting deliberate focus and practice on learning to sit at a piano correctly is stupid and insignificant. But mastery is about understanding that kind of stuff, the smaller, insignificant stuff that we think is insignificant, mastering that is part of the whole, and it's going to lead to mastery of that skill. And the classic example of this is from the movie The Karate Kid, where Daniel asks Mr. Miyagi to teach him karate. And you know the story. Basically what happens is Mr. Miyagi has Daniel paint his fence and wash his car and sand his floors. And eventually Daniel gets fed up and says, man, you ain't even teaching me karate. You just got me doing all of these chores. Forget it. I'm out. But what Daniel didn't know is that Mr. Miyagi was actually having him put laser focus on something that seemed insignificant. because as it turned out, painting the fence was actually teaching him how to block a punch, and sanding the floor was teaching him how to block kicks. It's exactly why this movie is genius, and I'm so looking forward to the next one coming out soon. Now, the next part of applying this strategy is targeting your weaknesses. So let's say you struggle to play the C major chord on the piano. Well, what we do is break that C major chord down into smaller pieces and put laser focus on them. So you know that the C major chord is made up of 3 notes, C, E, and G. What you'll do is practice playing one finger on the C, put laser focus on that and do it over and over. Then you put the next finger on the E, do the same thing, and then on the G, and then you combine those. You do multiple variations of them, like C and G, and then E and G, and then, backwards and forwards. And when you master that, you've mastered playing the C major chord. What you've done is master those small little pieces, those 1% pieces that led to mastery of the entire chord, and you've overcome your weakness. And then the next step in applying this Kaizen or 1% principle with deliberate practice is getting feedback. And this is something that is crucially important when it comes to mastering any skill, because what can happen is when you're putting laser focus and that targeted deliberate practice on these smaller skills, you can easily lose sight of the big picture, and you can get a false sense of the fact that you may or may not be improving. So feedback is about getting an accurate assessment of whether or not we're improving on the skill that we're trying to learn. And this is something that is crazy simple. All you got to do is pull out your phone and record yourself while you're putting in this targeted deliberate practice, so that you establish a sort of before and after that you can measure later on and see whether or not you're improving. Now, here's the best part about all of this. These principles, this secret, don't just apply to music. It applies to literally any skill. And this is something that's extremely important if you want to be successful, because to be successful, you don't need to just be a good musician. You need to have a good level of mastery of other skills. So you could even use this principle to learn and master what I like to call complementary skills, which are basically skills that go well or pair well with the major skill you're trying to learn. So in our learning to master the piano example, a good complementary skill for that would be something like mastering the skill of communication. This is something that's really important when you want to have effective communication with people who are going to hire you and pay you money. Or even another musical skill. Something like learning to master singing goes really well with learning to master the piano, because you might want to play and sing. The formula is the same. Deliberate practice, focusing on the 1%, targeting your weaknesses, and getting feedback. Now, we talked about how the 1% rule and deliberate practice will help you master any skill faster and more effectively. But what if I told you that the most successful musicians take it even further and adopt other skills that help them not only play better, but transform their entire careers? So check out this video where I break down the 7 habits of successful musicians and discover how you can use these skills to level up and stand out.